Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, welcome to me. I guess this is Jan Lewis. Today we have Chris Robbins with us. Chris is going to share about the Spartan Pathfinder program and the Outward Bound program. He was in the Army, and he's going to tell us from way back when these programs were started. Welcome. And you came in from where today?
Southborough.
He came in from Southborough. I like that library over there. I like your library very much. I know where it comes where 85 and what's that other one? 30 and 85 meet. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Southborough is a beautiful town.
It is.
You like it?
Yeah, it is.
It didn't take you that long to get here. Did you use the directions I gave you to go down
Yes.
30 and then the back? All right, we're going to hand the floor over here to Chris because he's going to talk about some brief highlights of his background and his military experience and what he's doing today. Go for it.
Well, thank you. And having this opportunity to share with you an experience I had 48 years ago in the military about something that I think most people would be surprised to learn about how the military helped its own when they were going through difficult times during the Vietnam War era.
Yeah.
But just to back up a little bit, to give a little background, I live in Southborough, Massachusetts. I've been there since 1979. I was in the military for 21 years. I had 3 years of active duty and 18 years in the reserves, and I retired as a major.
And you were at Fort Bragg?
And I was stationed at Fort Bragg. And what happened during the time I went in, there was great resistance to the war, the Vietnam War, and there were demonstrations all across the country. And there were troubles within the rank and file of the military who resisted the war, and this problem manifested itself at Fort Bragg. And there were problems with drug addiction, there was problems with insubordination, and we had a lot of soldiers deserting and also being sent to the stockade for crimes they'd committed.
And what year was this now?
This is 1970. 1970.
There was that much of a bad drug problem already by then?
Yes. And they even had their own addiction center called Operation Awareness to deal with this. And all the major units at Fort Bragg, it's a large base, we would meet once a month to talk about these problems and how we could address them. And they found out that I had been an Outward Bound instructor up in Maine at the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School. And Outward Bound's mission since 1940, where it was founded in England, and now there are 11 Outward Bound schools in this country and many more around the world, is designed to help youth and young adults deal with their challenges, help them learn teamwork, leadership skills, and confidence to face the challenges in their life. And they do this by putting them through a 25-day adventure, if you will, at sea or in the mountains or in the desert.
I'd heard about Outward Bound, but I'd always associated it with the kids.
Well,
but it's also for adults.
Yes, it's also adults can attend, and all of a sudden it was being applied to help those who were in trouble. And a lot of the Outward Bound principles of bringing young adults and youngsters to in separate groups, but working through this program, using the environment as a means to test their mettle, if you will, and challenge them in a way that will build their confidence and enable them to return successfully to their homes. Now, what happened is the military said, Chris, can you do this for us in the military? So they assigned me to Special Forces that took this role to support me in designing and developing a Outward Bound kind of program inside the military for the military soldiers that were suffering from insubordination problems or drug addiction or being in the stockade. And if they went through this program successfully, they could be reassigned to their units, have a successful completion of their military service, and get an honorable discharge. And so we started. And the long and short of it, we ran 4 programs over 2 years.
4?
Yes. And we went to the major national parks around the country and put these soldiers through a very demanding, rigorous outdoor adventure, if you will, challenging them in many ways that would test their physical and mental stamina levels and help them learn to overcome these challenges.
And you took part in it.
Well, I was part of the leadership team that took these young soldiers through the mountains of Montana, through the rapids on the Verde.
How about the White River, the White Mountains up in New Hampshire?
Well, we haven't gone there yet, but we were down in Arizona at the Tonto National Forest. We did a river raft trip that almost capsized one of the boats we had. Yeah. I almost lost my life, but I'm here to talk about it.
I was going to say, you had to have been really in good shape. I mean, you're in good shape now, and you must have been like, I don't know, in terrific shape when you were helping these guys.
Well, it was fun. It was great fun, and what we were doing is we were challenging these soldiers by putting them in positions of responsibility when they went out in the field and organizing themselves to go to the next point. Like when we were in Montana, they had to go from point A to point B, which could be 30 miles with their packs.
Right.
So they had to plan it, organize it, and we would coach them. And then there would be obstacles. There could be a cliff they had to go up or rappel down, or river rapids to get across. And with those kinds of challenges, they overcame obstacles they never thought they could achieve before.
Oh, yeah.
And this helped build their self-confidence. And then one of the highlights of it was we did survival training, and we put them out in the woods or in the desert, literally, for 2 nights and 3 days.
I'm thinking how long I'd last doing that.
Well, we gave them a little food and some water.
A little food? Okay. You've seen that movie, Private Benjamin?
Yes.
Yeah, Goldie, right here. I would have been like, okay, where's breakfast?
Well, Outward Bound is for women, too, so it's you could do it.
Maybe. Was it for the new recruits or recruits who had trouble adjusting to the military life?
It was those trying to adjust to the military, and because we had a draft back then, so you had a lot of individuals coming in who never even wanted to be there. Yeah. So you were dealing with that. But the biggest thing was the challenge of the war movement to stop the war.
The Vietnam War,
there was a lot of we had one general write to General Westmoreland indicating there was great hostility here in the Army.
Yeah.
And when there's that kind of hostility, you can't be an effective fighting force.
Right.
So that's why the highest levels of command took sincere interest in this to solve this problem and work with those troubled soldiers to enable them to succeed. And a couple of examples, I actually talked, this is 48 years ago, I just talked to one of the participants 2 weeks ago, and he said, Chris, the program saved my life.
Oh, that must
have
made
my
you feel
career.
Good. Oh, wow.
The program was so successful that they had options when they went through the course to come back in the military and serve the contract that they had signed, or to stay in. And he said to General Emerson of the Special Forces, I want to stay in Special Forces. Now, he had a criminal record, and they wouldn't let you in with a criminal record into Special Forces, but it was a minor offense, and the general had his records expunged. He was able to get into Special Forces and make Special Forces a career, and
he turned his life around because of what the Outward Bound.
And what's interesting is successful commanders, the ones that are successful are always listening. I call it adaptive leadership. You're listening to everything that's happening in your command, and it's filtered up the chain of command and gets to the top people in charge. And all of a sudden, they said, and keep in mind, Special Forces is a combat organization with a mission to go win wars, not to rehabilitate anybody.
Right.
But the general in charge says, this problem is so serious, we've got to take responsibility and help our soldiers in need. Yeah. And that's what's so impressive.
Is it still there or still there?
No, the program, we ran 4 of these programs. We took 30 through the program, and we had a 60% success rate, meaning they were able to come back into their units, get processed in, complete their tour of duty, get an honorable discharge, and in some cases, some of them stayed in and made it a career.
Now, the next one coming up is Spartan Pathfinder. What prompted the Army to start this?
Well, that crisis that was in the military in terms of the morale of the soldiers and the problems getting themselves into. They saw this as a means to help those who were in trouble.
Yeah, the Spartan Pathfinder Rehabilitation Program at Fort Bragg in 1970.
Right.
Now, you were there for that, too.
I started that.
So you were the founder of it.
Yeah, I was the instigator of it. They learned that I had that outward bound experience, and they said, Chris, come over here and help us create our own program so we can make this fly.
I bet they were tickled to death.
Well, they were very appreciative to the point that we briefed General Westmoreland personally on this, and he asked that we codify it and send it out to all the commands throughout the Army worldwide to use and consider to helping their troops improve morale.
Sure.
And we ran 4 programs, and then I left in 72, and there were 2 more programs run. And then the Vietnam War wound down, and the Army wasn't taking in as many soldiers, and it became a volunteer service. But surprisingly enough, years later, right now, the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School up in Maine is processing soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and
what part of Maine?
Iraq, off of Rockport in Penobscot Bay.
Okay.
And it's God's country up there. It's just absolutely beautiful. I recommend anybody. You think you have to go to Norway to see the beautiful?
I know. Well, I was born in South Portland, but I guess we took off within months and moved to Massachusetts, so I didn't get to see it.
Well, take a ferry ride in Penobscot Bay, and you'll just be so surprised because there's an island there where the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School started, and now they work with veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq to help them adjust and deal with their PTSD. So I find it interesting that we started this back in 70 on the active duty component size, and this concept is taken hold in another format with soldiers who are coming back from the war zones.
So Spartan Pathfinder Rehabilitation Program, how would people get a hold of this if they think that somebody that they know could use this?
Well, Spartan Pathfinder was run by the Army and it was stopped. But it is now, if you have veterans who want to go through the program, you can contact the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School in Maine. Okay. And they'll help you apply. And what's interesting, I talked to the director up there recently, and he said it's all privately funded, so it's no cost to the soldier coming back from the war zone.
It shouldn't be any cost. That's right.
Well, it's being done by a private group.
Sure.
And so it's working there. But another aspect of the program is, I'll give you another example of one of the soldiers completing the last part of the program was a 5-mile run with a pack, and he had a sprained knee and just barely not a sprained knee, but an ankle problem. And I was running with him to keep him company and keep him going. And this is the last day, and he's going to have a chance to go back and get an honorable discharge. And his name was Eddie Quartz. And I said to him, Eddie, you finished. You did it. You did a fabulous job. Yeah. And he stopped me in my tracks, and he said, Lieutenant, I didn't finish. I've just begun.
Oh, did he go back? Did he become a lifer?
Back, and he completed his tour of duty and got an honorable discharge, for which he was very grateful.
Do you stay in touch with a lot of these men that you helped?
Well, I've only been able to stay in touch with one that I lucked out. I actually found him I remembered where he was originally from when he was in the service, and I called information, and I just lucked out and got him.
I bet he was surprised to hear from you.
Oh, he was.
We're talking with Chris Robbins, and he's telling us about the Spartan Pathfinder program and the Outward Bound program for our soldiers. So the Outward Bound is not anymore, right?
No. Spartan Pathfinder is the program that was being conducted when I was on active duty. Okay. It doesn't exist anymore. But Outward Bound is a worldwide organization with about 11 schools here in the States. And they are, I know the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School is running a program for returning vets.
I like that Spartan. They both are great, but that Spartan Pathfinder program, why didn't they continue this?
Well, sometimes what happens, times change, and the demands and the pressures of the military We weren't getting in draftees. We were getting in volunteers, so we weren't having the kind of challenges.
Sure.
And the war had wound down, and we didn't have the internal resistance against a war that soldiers that were going over there didn't understand, didn't think the goals were achievable, or was the war worthwhile. And so when that war ended, a lot of the problems we were facing at that time diminished significantly.
They diminished. Chip, Chris, how could people get a hold of you if they have some questions about what we're talking about today?
Well, feel free to call me. It's Chris Robbins. I live in Southborough. My cell phone is 508-735-6100. And I'd be glad to talk to you about if you know of soldiers who need assistance. I'm also a part of another organization called the Armed Forces Committee of Worcester County, and we celebrate our veterans every year at an annual dinner, but we also direct them to agencies like Veterans Inc.
I've heard of that. Yeah, that's up in Worcester.
It's in Worcester. They're big players in helping veterans process in, and there's also another one called Project New Hope. But I also wanted to thank the citizens, because when you think of the military, it's such a large institution, but your tax dollars help fund that Spartan Pathfinder program that aided their needs at a time when the country was very conflicted about the Vietnam War.
I still like the idea of it, though. Is there anything that comes close to that to help the vets?
Well, the Outward Bound experience would be that kind of experience.
But something that's more geared to the mental health PTSD, more not physical, more the mental health. Is there something?
That's what they're dealing with up at the Outward Bound School in Maine.
Okay, so that maybe somebody doesn't. The Outward Bound program, you'd help to be able to physically go through it, but if somebody's suffering from a mental illness, that's going to be tricky.
Well, I don't know the details of the Hurricane Island one, but the one we held at Fort Bragg, no one could go into the program unless they were cleared for mental. They had a mental evaluation, physical evaluation. The legal teams came in to assess. We were taking people out of the stockades and taking them out into where the public were using the national parks, and we got them cleared there. So there was an extensive screening done before they went out. So we were working with people that we thought we could properly work with, and those that had bigger challenges were resourced into other departments that could help them deal with their problems.
You gave them a whole new lease on life. Would you say the majority of them succeeded?
Yes. Well, we had over 60% success rate.
Oh, that's great.
It was outstanding, and one of the contributing factors included the non-commissioned officers and the lieutenants from Special Forces that I worked with were right there along with those soldiers going through this very rigorous 25-day
You were right there, too.
Right, and we even had a chaplain, and so they had the best leadership helping them go through this. We just didn't stick them out in the wilderness and drive them
You
hard.
had a chaplain along.
Yeah, we actually did.
And did he cover all the 3 basic religions?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but he was there to be a support model for the soldiers who needed it.
Yeah.
So it was done. It was supported by all the departments that were critical in the future lives of these soldiers who A, volunteered, B, got cleared to be able to go and had an opportunity to succeed.
And have an honorable discharge.
Yes.
Were they from all of the different military branches?
No, it was just the Army.
Just the Army. Now, I wonder why they just zeroed in on the Army.
Well, it's because that was just one. We started it in the military, in the Army, and we shared that with other commands and other different services, but it was the Army that started it and took advantage of it.
Do you, Chip, Chris, why do I want to keep calling him Chris?
Chris.
Do you ever keep track of how things are going at the VA? I mean, we talked about this earlier, that they're keeping up with the needs, not letting a veteran wait for months to get medical care, and then he passes away. I've heard about this happening. This is wrong. Have you been watching that?
Well, I'm not the VA agent for the town, nor am I really involved in the details of how well they're working, but I do have a friend that I took regularly to the VA, and he said, Chris, based on his experience, it's been exceptional.
It's been, okay, so maybe they've turned things around?
Exceptional.
They've turned things around a little bit?
Responsive and exceptional.
Chris,
I've heard that from 2 veterans that I know personally here in Southborough who've used the VA.
Chris, when you left the military, what did you decide to do?
I spent most of my career in sales and marketing and in the management consulting field, and I had my own business.
Yeah. Was it the printing business you mentioned, or?
Well, I actually worked at the old White Machine Works building for the printing press division known as ATF Davidson, and I was their marketing manager, and then I was the sales manager for the White Casting Company.
I read about you. Was it the article in the Sunday Telegram? Who was it that did the article on you? That's how I found you. I think it must have been in the Telegram or Metro West. Maybe the Metro West.
Community Advocate, I think.
Could be, okay, Community Advocate. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'd heard of Outward Bound, but again, I only affiliated it with the kids. Mm-hmm. But then the one in Fort Bragg of the Spartan Pathfinder, you enlightened me about that more. Now, who were the key contributors to this program to help it succeed?
Well, the key to this whole thing was it had to start at the top with the command to allocate all the resources it took to implement this, keeping in mind that the unit I was in, Special Forces, the Center for the headquarters for Special Forces, their mission was a combat one. It wasn't to help troubled soldiers. That was somebody else's. But they felt that a new program would be more effective, and they took this on. And so they, what I call in the military, stretching the rules. No, this wasn't our mission, but we had to help our soldiers in needs, and that's why we took it on. And so the contributors were, it had to start at the highest level. We got General Westmoreland supporting it, Hank Emerson, General Emerson, who was commander of the Special Forces, ran it. And the contributors were the staff who cleared and processed the participants to make sure they were mentally and physically capable of participating, and the soldiers who worked with them to help them get through this 25-day high-adventure program.
25 days in the wilderness.
Yeah.
I mean, I camped in a little tent up in the White Mountains for like overnight, the weekend. Roughed it. I didn't have a trailer. I was right there on the ground, right.
Well, I'll share a story to liven up. Most people don't know that the military really, they've got a primary mission to win a battle and not much time for fun, but they have a great sense of humor. And what we didn't realize is that a couple of the participants had brought a mascot along, 2 mascots, and we couldn't believe it.
Dogs? No?
Try 2 goldfish.
Goldfish?
Yes.
But how did they survive this?
Oh, they were feeding them and taking care of them, and everybody was fussing about it. And then all of a sudden they died because they didn't have the right aquarium. Yeah. This is out in the middle of Montana. Oh. And so what did they do? They held a military funeral for 2 goldfish.
This was in Montana?
This was in Montana. You can't beat it. There's only in the military can humor take over.
Were you there? Did you see?
I was there. In complete shock and disbelief.
Did you have a hard time not laughing?
Oh, we were all standing there at attention going through the rituals of a formal funeral for these 2 goldfish. But that's the gift in the military. When you're dealing with stress, humor is the cure.
You have got a family heritage in the military. What's that all about?
Well, when I look back on how I got involved in all of this, I realized that prior to the Revolution, I've had a relative in the colonial wars, in the Revolution. Mm-hmm. There was a General Warren who fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill, who regretfully didn't make it through that battle, but he was the one that handed the orders to Paul Revere to warn the conquered citizens that the British were coming. He was a relative. Then I had an uncle who flew 30 missions in a B-24 bomber over Germany during World War II and survived.
Anybody in the Civil War?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. We had a relative who died at the Battle of the Wilderness, and he's buried in Charlton, Massachusetts. And then I had 2 brothers who were also in the reserves and an uncle who served in headquarters in France during the Korean War.
I'll bet. Now, who was it that was in the Civil War? What relative was that?
His name was Hanscom Robbins.
I bet you he
Elliot
used,
Hanscom Robbins.
the weapon that he used was probably my great-great-grandfather Jocelyn, Benjamin Jocelyn, invented the Jocelyn rifle for the Civil War, and so the government would buy it from him and send them out to the soldiers. I'll bet you your relative might have used a Jocelyn rifle.
Yes, and what's interesting, generations later, my brother would marry the great-granddaughter of a Confederate soldier, and his great-grandfather was serving in the Union Army. So all of a sudden, it's amazing how time will heal old wounds, and
Definitely.
a Confederate will marry a Yankee.
That's for sure. How can people get a hold of you, Chris, again? How can they get a hold of you if they have questions about this?
Well, feel free to call me. I have an email address at chrisr2346@verizon.net. And my phone number is 508-735-6100.
Chris, who do you thank the most? We've got about 4 minutes left for enabling this program to happen and succeed. Well, yourself for one.
Well, I happened to be at the right spot at the right time because there was this earnest concern at the highest levels that they wanted something different that would make a significant change in the way our soldiers could be helped.
Right.
And I have to, when they heard about this, and we briefed one of the generals, General Emerson, about it, he said, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And he pulled his entire command together, and then it went up to a 3-star and a 4-star, and there wasn't, I've got to give credit to the higher level commands, and then they assign the best of the best to enable this program to work. So across the board in Fort Bragg, all the support teams, the medical teams, the site teams, the prison, the stockade staff, all participated in ensuring this achieved great success. I'll take credit for an idea, but in terms of putting it together, there was great coordination and great support.
Where is Fort Bragg?
Well, it's in North Carolina.
No wonder I didn't.
Well, those of us who are in the military, particularly the Army, there's the 82nd Airborne Division, which is an active division that's ready to mobilize in a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And Special Forces Headquarters, which is an active unit that sends combat troops all over the world.
This is amazing. Chris, we got to have him back on again. I think we could go on for an hour about all this. Have you ever thought of writing a memoir? Having a memoir about this?
Well, it's... I think it's a great story.
I do too.
And I think the citizens of this country should be proud that we had a military that showed that kind of need during a very...
And you stepped up right at the right time.
I happen to be the guy at the door.
Thanks, Chris, for being with us. We'll get you back on again. As like I said, there's a lot more to talk about with Chris, I know.
Well, I wanted to thank all those participants who succeeded. If you're out there, give me a call. But thank you for making this a great success. Without you working hard to achieve a great, successful experience for yourself, we couldn't have succeeded. Thank you.
We couldn't have succeeded without you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time and be my guest.